Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Nope Coach podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Culberg, joined today by Ginny Robertson, and we are going to chat about craving connection. It's something we've both seen, and we didn't say this before we hit record, but when I think about this, in a time where we are technically more connected than ever, like Ginny and I are meeting from literally across the globe, it is a different day here in Australia, being in the future, than it is for you. But in a time where technically we're more connected than ever, how many people feel disconnected because of so many reasons? So anyway, welcome, Ginny. Where would
Thank
you like to
you.
begin?
Okay, Craving Connections. I told you that I actually did a talk on that. I wrote a talk for a spiritual center, and it's what I'm all about. I'm all about connection, and I've been about connection since I was a little girl. Want to hear that quick story?
Yes, please.
When I was a little girl, around the age of 6 or 7, I started clubs so I could be the president.
I love this
And
already.
I would charge little girls a dime to come into my bedroom for a club meeting. And I was born in 51, so a dime, man, I could go buy a comic book for a dime. There was a lot of retail stuff I could shop for 60, 70 cents, maybe sometimes $1 if I had 10 little girls. And so I don't remember my first club, but I do remember that I got a little bossy, they thought. And so they would not come to my club anymore. And then I would start a new club and I would just have a different name. So I had a book club, a record club, a Barbie club, a stuffed animal club. And I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. I was bringing little girls together for some bigger purpose, I think, than just play. And I know there were some girls in my neighborhood that had some troubled home lives and things like that. And I look back now and think, wow, that makes sense. See, some of those things make sense. So I've always done some form of connecting women, girls and women.
I love this so much. You're like literally a natural born entrepreneur, like without any training or marketing. Like this is the theme. Like these are the themes for the event. This is
Yeah.
the cover charge or the admittance. And I'm going to be the leader. That is
Yeah.
so cool. And I think there are there's so many things. Recently, I came across a woman I met in a networking who I think it was the same networking I met you at. But anyway, story for another day. She's starting a podcast club, which is equivalent of a book club. It's
Wow.
paid. I think personally, I think there's always something about having a cover charge. It doesn't need to be much, like you were saying back in the day, being a dime, or even today, $5 or $10, the amount of a cuppa. And the people gather together and they listen to an episode of a podcast and then they discuss. And her theme, she works with people on the spectrum, so it's about ADHD or ADD. And I was like, that is such a clever idea. And I think, sometimes people ask, well, why should I pay for these things? And, each to their own. But if I've paid $5 or $10, I will turn up if I'm tired, if I'm cranky, whatever. Whereas if it's like, oh, it's free, I'm like, oh, I'll just catch the next one. And then 6 months have gone by and I've never turned up. So I
Mhm.
love that, from a young age, you had a theme, you had a cover charge, you had, this is how it's going to go.
Yep. And that translated my career, early career up until I was 40 was in corporate finance. So I did all the right stuff, went to school, I was trying to think an appropriate word for online to use, calling as I clawed my way up the ladder and banged my head into the glass ceiling. That was the day for that. But the thing I love most about my work was mentoring other people, not just women, but just other people, and trying to help them have a better work experience and get the training they needed and all of that. I really was not well suited for that work or the even the office environment, but because I've been trained to be a good girl and a real productive member of society, I faked it. I just did really well. But then when I turned 40, I'd had enough and I just left and I went to work for a transformational seminar company I'd been a client of, and I'd gone through their year-long training program to facilitate their programs. And so there I am again now, bringing people together, but at a higher level so that they can like change their lives and make a greater impact in the world. And they were in the area, I'm in the Baltimore, Maryland area in the US, and they left the area about 3 years in, and I knew I couldn't go back. to that
Mm.
that environment. For one thing, I was a dinosaur. I mean, you leave something like that for 5 minutes and you're, dead in the water. And I'd also met my husband, and he very generously said, take some time, figure some things out, and I'll hold down the fort. And so I started just creating some of my own things. And then I had a great opportunity to do something which I won't go into here, but it put me in touch with a lot of women. And I will tell you, even though I was connecting girls at a young age, as I grew up and as I had a lot of friends, but when I got into the work environment, I didn't have a lot of women friends because we were not playing real well together. It was
Yes.
very competitive. It was very nasty in some ways. I'm guilty too. I mean, I said some stuff that I look back and go, I can't believe I said things like that, about working for women. I am a woman. How could I say that? But that was the environment. And so I met all these really great women and I wanted to bring them together because I thought they had friends. So I threw a party at my house. It's before the internet. So I sent out handwritten invitations. And I think the invitation said something like, I know some great women. I think you do too. Invite them, show up at my house Saturday afternoon, bring food.
I love that.
And all I did was clean my house and have some food and drinks, right? And 60 plus women showed up for that first gathering.
I just want to interrupt you there for something I just want to reflect for the listeners. It can be that simple. I think sometimes, in this day and age where we are craving connection and we think, I could put something on like this, whether in person, as Ginny did, here's my house, bring a plate. Or that's what we say in Australia, bring some food, bring a dish, whatever. Or online, here's the Zoom link, or here's the registration page, and this is something I know that you do in your business, so we can get into later. But what tends to stop so many people is they're like, I don't have the branding, I don't know my colors, I don't have the cover art, I don't know how to edit it, like, and so on. They overcomplicate it 6 ways to Sunday.
Yeah.
And it's like, that could come if you so chose to go down that line, but you don't need that. You just need a time, a date, a place, and what to bring. Start there, because I think I see people too, they do, and I'm not, no knocking to people who are designers or whatever, but they spend a lot of money getting, designing, getting copywriting done, getting everything all polished. Have you tested if people are actually interested in this thing yet? So if
I was
you
going to
go
say, do
really
you even know if it's a
simple,
good idea or not, right?
yeah, if
Yeah.
you're really simple, this time, this date, this place, this much if there's a cover charge, bring this. Like when I run trainings and things, bring a pen, bring a beverage of your choice, whatever. And if there are any rules, like if I do things, and this is just me personally, everyone's different, the Zoom room will be closed 5 minutes after the hour. So like turn up on time. That's something I'm very adamant about, because personally, if we've all just done the introduction, and that person turns up late and they're hurried, and I find that disruptive personally. The other thing I do say too for my events, cameras on or off. Some people aren't comfortable with their cameras on. That's okay. You can communicate in the chat box if you're not comfortable with your camera on. But like if you keep it really simple, time, date, place, charge if there is one, what to bring, and test. And as you said, like you just put this invitation out. How many were you expecting? You got 60.
I didn't know. I don't even think I asked for RSVPs. I don't
Well, that's
recall.
another thing you might want to do, because if it is in person like that, like I don't know where you would have
Right.
fit them, but if 60 people came to my house, they'd literally be coming out the rafters.
Well, we've done events here before, my husband and I, for certain things. So we had a lot of folding chairs, we had tables, and I probably did have people call me, but I don't remember. I just remember the feeling in the room. And there was
Yes.
something magical that was happening. And because I've done a lot of what I call really superficial networking for my career, where I just had to show up with business cards. We weren't looking for business from the community. We were here. We
Yes.
care
And
about the
actually,
community,
that's another point too. Sorry to interrupt, but
Okay, please.
so many times, like I no longer go to in-person things. I'm highly sensitive, socially awkward introvert. I shine online, I don't do in person. Everyone does differently. But when I used to do them, the fascination or the thing with the business card. It's like, here's my card. And sometimes people would literally interrupt. Like I was having a conversation with someone, interrupt to shove their business card in my face. And I was like, will I throw this in the bin or will you? Do you know what I mean? It's like, but if you were bringing people together, it naturally happens. You get having a conversation, you find out what they do, they find out what you do, you're talking to someone else. Hey, I know a person. And that is fostered organically rather than this weird exchange that I don't even know who this person is. Like I get home and I'd have business cards coming from everywhere and I look at the name and I was like, I don't even remember who this is. Like, did we even have a conversation? It was so, oh, that wasn't connection for me. That was just transaction.
Exactly. It's very transactional. And you are telling my story here. You really are. We're like sisters from another mister, as they say, you know. And so I would just, the energy in the space was just amazing. And I noticed that there were real conversations happening about real things. I mean, it's fine to have that. I do kind of disparagingly call it idle cocktail chatter. I can only take so much of that. Yeah, I'm interested in where you're going on vacation, and your new purse is lovely, but I want to get down deep, quick.
Yeah.
And there were some intimate conversations happening. There was some vulnerability showing up. And I'm thinking, I don't know what this is, but I really like it because I hadn't experienced that really as an adult woman with other women. And I decided at the end of that first one, I said, okay, everybody, I'm going to do this again, same month next year. And they go, no, you can't wait. Something is happening here. This is different. And you notice I didn't call it a networking event because it wasn't. It was just a gathering of women to connect and get to know each other. Some of the women did have businesses, but not everyone did. And I decided to do it every quarter. So I did it for 4 quarters. And I think the next time we had 15 women. So we sat in a circle and then we had 40. I mean, we had big groups, little groups. But two really important things happened during those 4 gatherings. One is the connection I was observing.
Mm.
And I started to realize that this is how women do it naturally. You mentioned it happens organically, it just happens naturally. But we've been given all these rules for networking, all these masculine rules for networking that were about the business card. The rules, at least in the States, is you wear a blazer, of course, so you have pockets, and then you have your business cards are in your right pocket, and you put their business cards in your left pocket, and I would go home much like you, and I would look at these cards, and this is back before the internet, so we had to call people and talk, and they
Oh, I
answered.
couldn't have done that.
They
No,
answered,
no,
so
no.
you had to actually.
Email, text message, whatever, carrier pigeon, no phone calls.
Most people answered their phones back then because that was the only way we communicated, or by fax. I'm not going to fax somebody anything. And they would start to pile up on my desk every time I went to an event, and I would just look at them and I would feel really bad. Time and money wasted, time and money wasted. And it started to make sense. It wasn't time and money wasted. It was a learning experience because that's not how I'm going to play this game. I'm going to create my own way to play it. So that was pretty cool. The thing that wasn't so cool is that I also gave every woman an opportunity to stand up and say a few words about herself. And there were just a number of women who had such a difficult time doing that. Many of them had businesses. They couldn't say that they were good at something. They would look at the floor. They would use that tiny little girl voice.
I always
And
had the high pitched, fast voice. So if you were
yes,
asking me, where'd you go on holiday? Like, the questions you were talking about, wonderful. So what do you do? Every time. It was like, oh, I
yeah,
get
the
it.
little insecure girl comes out, doesn't she? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so after observing that for a year, 4 quarters, I said to myself in a moment of insanity, what would happen if I take this out of my house, create an organization around it, and give women a safe place to show up and practice being who they really are? And I had my first meeting 3 months after that.
I
And I'm
love
still
that.
doing it 24 years later. And it's all, it all happened that way. That's been my purpose for all of this time. But the really big thing is women had to learn to connect rather than network because it's not
Yes.
the same thing. And
And I
there are so
think,
many people. Go ahead.
oh, as soon as you put the label network, something happens to people's nervous system. That they immediately go to what's my elevator pitch, or what am I offering, or how can this person be useful to me? Like I've been to a number of things, and I deliberately don't say a lot. It's always better to listen, observe, and whatever. And sometimes people aren't interested in you until they find out, like, oh, that's Suzanne. She's got a top 2% podcast. How people are suddenly very interested in me who didn't show me any interest beforehand. And I was like, that's that whole networking. What can I get out of this?
How can you help
And
me? Yeah.
when I go to connect, when I go to speak, I don't care how many people are there. I don't care how big their following is. It really is the power of one, because I've spoken to things where they've had 100,000 or 200,000 followers and nothing's happened. No one's joined my list. No one's signed up for my thing. No one's reached out afterward. And I taught it something last week, and there was 12 people in the Zoom room. And also too, I don't pitch, I don't give stuff because I trust that people who like me will find me. But I got 4 emails after that event. So 4 of the 12 were like, thank you so much. 2 of which were talking about further work together. And I just trust, as you said, it happens organically. When you gather and when you connect, you have that chat. Whereas when it's a perfect polished pitch speech, here's the 30 seconds, all about me, rah, 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 and what can I get out of this? I find it fascinating, even podcasting as a whole platform and connecting and chatting, because technically, unless it's a co-hosted show, you're chatting to one person that, hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands could hear. So there's that. But I think sometimes people forget the connection you have with the person that you're sitting with the host, with the co-host. I've had people literally reach out to me and they're like, oh, I came across you via Jane. And I was like, oh, what do you think of our episode? Oh, I didn't listen to it. I was just chatting to Jane and she said, I need to reach out to you. So like that, the things that you meet, or as you said in your events, some of the women didn't have businesses. So if you were networking, you'd be like, well, what good are you to me? And next, but
Yeah.
they might have a friend who has a business, or there's connections that happen, that without it being official or transactional or whatever, I think gets so dismissed when we get the corporate business suit networking hat on.
I did call my first organization On Purpose Networking for Women
Interesting. And what was
because
the
that was
response with
all
the
we were
title like
doing.
that?
It was huge. It was huge.
Mm.
And I was always drawn to the purpose word. And this is before it was just 2000. They
Oh, it
wasn't
wasn't
being
the buzzword
incorporated
then.
much. Right. It wasn't the buzzword. There have been many books written about it. But I thought, depending on who the person is, there's 2 meanings here. One purpose can be about, I've got goals, I'm going after them, I'm really focused. And the other is, why am I here? So I thought it would appeal to 2 types of women, and they need to think that, and they're going to get both when they show up. They're going to hear about both. And about 10 years in, I changed the name because, and you kind of triggered my thought on this. A woman had been a member for a year, and she emailed me and said, I'm not renewing my membership because I haven't gotten any business. And I looked, and she'd been to 3 meetings in the entire year to begin
Only
with,
3. Wow.
only 3.
Because you
And
do 4 or more a month. You do
this is when
lots.
I was only in person, and I did 12 a month in person around the state. But within 30 minutes, you could probably hit 6 different places every month. But she'd been to 3, but what hit me is it's the networking word. She expects to get business when she's networking. And though I really didn't get that very much with people, but I thought I need to shift this energy because that's not what we do. We
Yes.
connect, we're a community. So in 2010, I changed the name and changed all of that, but the format of the meeting stayed the same because they worked, and they were all about that anyway, if that makes sense. It was
100%. So
just that
what's
we
it
were
called now?
called this. It's called On Purpose Woman Global Community.
Yes. And I love that you've got the community in the title. You've got the purpose. And do you still have, is it almost exclusively women in business, or do you still have the mix?
I didn't know who would show up when I did it officially. And a lot of different types of women showed up, but it started to kind of flush itself out where I was attracting a lot of women entrepreneurs who are in more holistic businesses, or they may have been a CPA or a real estate agent, but they were doing it from a very different kind of heart-centered perspective, or more more connected, And I would have, I remember this one time, especially a woman came for her first meeting, and she was a massage therapist. And she said, I went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and 2 different men made lewd remarks to me about massage when I gave them my
Oh,
card.
no.
And I'm like, what decade is this? Right. And there were also women doing some kind of what I considered then out there things. Now I don't, because I just hadn't dabbled in all of it yet, but more like energy work and things like that. And they felt like this was a safe place to show up and practice talking about what they did. And then there were other women who needed what they did, so it was very kind of symbiotic relationships were being formed. And that's
I think that's such a
Yeah.
powerful place for women to connect, to practice I heard the term once, a safer space, and the
Mhm.
person May saying was explaining it. She's like, no one can ever guarantee a safe space because we never know what's triggering for one person, for someone else is like nothing. So ever since then I've always said a safer space, because I really resonated with that. But a safer place, if the thing that you are providing isn't general run of the mill understood by everyone, so you cannot have the lewd remarks, or because once you are really solid in what it is that you do and can explain it, then you could, if you so chose, go to the regular place, because you're going to be unflappable. Like someone could make some remark
Exactly.
like, have you ever watched Ted Lasso?
I haven't, but we can't get it through our
You
channel, our
can buy it on
service.
DVD now.
Oh, you can?
It
Because I
released on the
we need to
31st
get.
of August on
Oh,
DVD, which is
good. Okay.
31st of July. So just last month. Anyway, so you can get it. So everyone listening to this, I'm going to do a whole solo episode, Ted Lasso. I used to have to buy Apple. I don't often use Apple TV, but I get it to watch the show. It's like my comfort show. Anyway, all this to say, one of the characters, she's an actress. Her name's Hannah Whittingham, I think. Somebody can correct me. I'm terrible with surnames. Always remember first names. But she was at an event recently, at like a gala. She was dressed up. She was gorgeous. She had this dress on. And one of the male photographers said something like, show us a bit of leg or something. And she absolutely put him in his place. It was so good. And I was like, but to have a place where you can build your ability, capacity, wherewithal, so that you are actually, this is not okay, and here's why. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes if you're not of a place of confidence to be able to do that, to have a space where you can build that is incredible, because people should never comment on someone's appearance. And it's funny, that video, it went viral. I should not have gone to the comment section. Like, sometimes just don't go. But it's like, oh, she shouldn't have been wearing a dress like that if she didn't want comments. And I'm like, what century are we in? As you said, like, this is no. But to have the space, because just because you haven't heard of a modality or a type of healing or something doesn't mean you can be cheeky, sarcastic, rude, or whatever. Like, if it's not for you, next.
Yeah. I had a marketing coach I was working with, and she was also a member. She joined the community, and I was lamenting to her early on that, it's all these women are showing up, and a lot of them are just doing some stuff. I'm not even sure what it is, but is it legit? And what about when the Payne Weber? I don't know if that's a financial institution here. When they show up, are they going to think we're all weird? And she said something so beautiful to me. She said, "Can you just be grateful for who's showing up?"
Yes. And also, too, speaking about craving connection and genuineness and gathering, there are often people who have a modality I'm unfamiliar with, because there's just so many. When I ask
Mhm.
the question from a genuine place, can you tell me more about this or whatever? Like, I'm honestly curious. It's in favor to both. It's in favor to you because you get to understand what it is, but it's in favor to them because then they get to learn how to explain it so that the layperson understands it. And it's just very recently, somebody asked me to give feedback on their website, and the heading or the lead line said something about animism. I didn't know what animism was, Ginny. I had to go Google it. And I said to her, with great love, if you hadn't asked me to review this, I would have clicked off immediately. This could be a good thing though, because if you want to filter out people who don't know what this is, that's
Mm.
great. Like, like, I swear a lot. So my website has fruity language on it. It's deliberate. If people are like, oh, what are you doing swearing when people first meet you? I'm like, preparing them for when I swear when we're actually having a conversation. So, being you in these spaces, as you said,
Yeah.
so you're not the high pitched voice of confusion, and then understanding, like, when someone's genuinely trying to discern what it is that you do, then you can explain it in other ways, in other places from that experience. And I think that's invaluable.
I agree. I think you've been living in my head, Suzanne. You're saying so many things that I've experienced. It's so interesting. And I go back to when I first started the in-person meetings. I had one meeting, and then within a year I had three, and I just kept growing them. But it was this, in fact, I still have some people around who were around back then, and they remind me, you never say this much anymore, but we got kind of tired of it after a while. But I would always almost like preach to them. And it was something that I had learned from a book called The Celestine Prophecy. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book.
I
The author,
started reading it and I honestly I put it down. It'd be interesting I could drink. I don't know if you've ever done it. You start reading something, you're like, this is a bit too woo or a bit too abstract for me. But then later you read it again because you've changed and you're like, this is the best thing ever. The book hasn't
I was that
changed.
way with
You
Gary
have.
Zukav's first book, The Dancing Wu Li Masters. I was like, my head's exploding. But The Celestine Prophecy, I had a hard time getting through it because I thought it was the most poorly written book I'd ever read. Maybe that was part of the problem too. But there were these insights. There was these 7 insights. And I thought if they had just give me the cliff notes for the insights, because they were brilliant. And one of the insights is something, I'm going to paraphrase it here. Notice the people whose path crosses yours. They're there for a reason. Otherwise, they would have taken a different road. And
I
I talked
like
about that at
that.
every meeting in the early days. Pay attention to the person who's across from you. You're going to have an impact on each other. You may never know what or why. Sometimes you will, but just be curious, be open, be friendly. If that's, I mean, very basic stuff. Be courteous. I started talking about something a few years ago I called generous listening and conscious
Mm.
networking, with those 2 things together. But this all went back to that Celestine prophecy. And I think that if we were all coming from that space of why is this person across from me and how can I help them get whatever it is they need, then we relax. We don't have to remember our pitch. They'll ask us a question or not. I have had people say to me, well, what happens if I spend all this time listening and then they're not interested in me? And I'm like, well, they're just probably not your people then.
Yes,
That's a
it
nice way
happens
to,
naturally
it
if it's a
does.
fit. And the other thing, I think you'll love Ted Lasso because he said, "Be curious." He quotes in the show, I can't remember who he attributes it, but "Be curious, not judgmental,"
Oh,
because we
good.
can be judgmental. I mean, I'm judgmental sometimes. If I get an email, because we get so many emails, is this person legit? They're just trying to sell me something. Because it'll be like, I love your show or your channel, or whatever, and you'll be like, oh, it's like, but do you know you could get so many more views if you just did this? And it's like,
Mhm.
so,
Nice way to open up the door to me, right? Tell me what I need before you've even met
yeah, I was
me.
like, does that ever work for
Yeah.
people? It's like, at least those ones are polite. Some of them are just rude. I can fix your
Mhm.
this. And it's like, wow, I didn't realize I was broken. But and if I ever wanted help, I'm not going to go to the person who's led with that. But I think the baity switch, I love it so much. So now, like part of the filtering when I'm reading, if they say they love it, great. What did they love about it? Like if they say, I loved
Mhm.
your video, your conversation with Ginny was amazing. You guys talked about networking. Okay, at least they've read something. But sometimes it's just a copy paste. Anyway, that's a whole other tangent of conversation. But back
Yes,
to
I'm
this.
sure we could take this into 50 more episodes, I know,
Oh,
because
you'll
we
have to come back,
really,
totally. Well, if you're up for it. But
yeah.
the thing about, what is in it for me, like if I listen to them for half an hour or whatever, it, it's if it was meant to be the two-way thing or people, it's fascinating because you and I met in a networking space of all things, like a Zoom breakout type situation. The really skilled, experienced people will get to like, oh, the time's about what about you or whatever, and then you'll make a follow-up coffee chat connection or whatever. Or sometimes it's kind of like that could be a sign if someone has like rallied to me about the whole time, never asked what I did, never for me in terms of going forward. It's like, is that a connection I want to pursue? No. So it wasn't wasted. It
Right.
was like, okay, so now I know what are the signs I need to look for, or like everything, as you said, be curious that everything is evidence, everything is useful, nothing's ever wasted.
Mhm.
Like even if I have a
Filtering system.
follow-up coffee chat with people and there's a no-show, people are like, oh, you wasted my time. No one ever wasted my time. My time's what I do with it. I change my form to say like, what are we going to chat about, or the things, like I don't, if people no-show me, you don't get another shot. If something happens
Mhm.
and you send me an email, I'm sick or whatever, totally, my internet's gone down. But if you just don't show up, I don't follow up. That's just the
Right.
way I go. But you
Yeah.
get to decide that for yourself. So your time's never wasted, is something that you can live by.
I'll tell you a quick story from a number of
Yes.
years ago that kind of proves all of this works. I was at a networking event and it was there were like 7 or 8 different groups that came together, and they had all of us who were running these groups, who had these groups, were on a panel. And it was men and women. There were about probably 150, 200 people in the room. And the person who was moderating was a member of my community and a few of the others who were also on the stage. And we were in the Q&A piece, and this woman raised her hand and said, what should I do with all of the business cards I collect at networking events? How should I handle them? And this woman starts to smile, and she turns around. I'm going to let Ginny Robertson answer that question.
Can I guess? You get to
Go
give your
ahead.
actual answer, because I can tell you, actually, I'll tell you what I would say for everyone listening, and then I want to hear Ginny's answer. I'd be like, throw them in the bin, or actually maybe recycle. But anyway, like, you know, if I've got all this stuff and I don't know what it is, I would discard it with love.
Yeah.
But what
You're a
was your
very
answer?
brilliant woman, Suzanne. Yeah. I said, if you are networking and you're going home with so many business cards, you don't know what to do with them, I think you've wasted your time, and I would just throw them away. And the women in the room gave this collective like sigh of relief. They were like, you could hear it. It's like, oh, she didn't ask me a follow-up question. She just says, okay. And the men looked at me like I had lost my mind. And they wanted to argue. A couple of the guys wanted to argue with me. And I'm like, this is my perspective. I'm talking to women. I only work with women. You know, you guys do what you need to do, but this is my experience. And, you know, we don't need anything more to feel guilty about in life.
Yes. Actually,
And
I
I
have
would just
one.
feel so guilty about not following up and doing all that stuff, but it would have been fake follow-up.
I have one caveat to that, actually. I amend my answer slightly. I'd probably look through them, and if a name or a tagline or if something stood out to me, I might email that person. As I said, I don't ring, each to their own. And I never answer my phone. So if you ring me, don't just keep ringing me. Leave a message and anyway, I digress.
There was no email back then.
But if today something like that
Yeah,
happened,
yeah.
and I would be honest and say, I came across your card, or I came across your website, or I came across whatever this is. I'm not sure how we connected, because I think there's something I would call myself blunt. Some people say endearing. I'm endearingly honest. Like before this call, for everyone listening, when Jenny and I jumped on, I was like, what was our topic for today? Because I had forgotten. But, you know, I think, you know, sometimes we try and, you know, I don't do the fake follow-up. Some people say follow-up Friday and send everyone the same email. And it's like, no one wants the same email. An endearingly honest message. I don't remember how we connected. I came across your card, your freebie, whatever it is. But I
Mhm.
felt called to reach out, like, you know, and that is open for them to respond. But don't send some fake BS thing if you don't want to. And the other thing too, we didn't even talk about this, but I'd love your opinion. If I go to a networking thing and people are like, oh, we should catch up, if you don't want to catch up, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know, I don't think we're a fit, or whatever, like, to be honest, rather than go, yeah, and then ignore their follow-up emails or calls or whatever,
Mhm.
because ghosting someone is never okay. I would rather be that sharp shooting straight, tell it like it is. Like, I go on a lot of podcasts and, you know, I pitch them, and I much prefer when people are like, I don't think we're a fit, or, you know, it's a no from me, or I don't like your language or whatever. Great. Then I know, then go, oh yeah, and then just this awkwardness. If it's not a fit for you, it's not a fit. That's okay.
It is okay. It has to be okay because we have limited time.
Yeah.
And, you
You're
know,
not for everyone. That's a good thing.
yeah, we don't have the capacity to be for everyone. And, you know, I do remember the early days when I first got the internet and I had a contact management. Well, I didn't have a contact management system yet, but I had like, you know, I think it was Hotmail or something. And people would email me after I sent out emails and say, take me off your list. Back then, they had to ask you to take them off your list. You know, now with my contact
Yes.
management system, they could just unsubscribe. But I remember being so hurt by that. And I would go, oh, what did I do? They must not, you know, this is in the early days when I was just, I don't know, I took everything personally because I didn't know what I was doing yet, and I didn't know why I was doing it. That was the key. Um,
I
Actually,
think
that's not quite true. I knew why I was doing it, but I really had no skills yet. I had to
I
develop a
think you've
skill.
raised such an excellent point. And maybe if we do a follow-up episode, I shouldn't assume, but if you ask, talking about, you know, when people unsubscribe, unfollow, leave, or whatever, why it's a good thing, because it can hurt. It does feel like rejection. I remember early in business when people would unsubscribe, my thing would be like, what did I do wrong, or what could I do differently? Instead of like, it's not a fit for whatever reason. They've seen themselves out. It's a gift for both of us.
Mhm.
And I work with it. Like, I think of one client in particular I've been working with recently, and she's like, oh, I don't want to send too many emails because I don't want people to unsubscribe. And I was like, you want people to unsubscribe who aren't a fit, because it's a win for both. Like, what is your email list for? is it for, purely entertainment, or is it for you're running a business? And, not saying that you have to buy from everyone. I don't subscribe only if I'm going to buy from someone. But if someone was like, oh, you
Right.
sent too many sales emails, I'm going to unsubscribe. Because people often will write you a long thing about why they have. It's like, do I email the supermarket and go, you're telling me milk was on special, didn't give me value? No. So
Yeah.
it's just like, I think, that noticing the feelings that come up. And sometimes there might be like, if, generally you don't get that many and you send one email and you get a significant number, you might be like, okay, that might, if there's an outlier. But most of the time, like, I don't know about you, but this is a not so secret. I've talked about it before. I deliberately keep my list small because the more people you have subscribing, the more you have to pay. So when I'm reaching the next level, I would deliberately send a couple of pure sales emails in a row. So those of you on my list will know Suzanne's trying to clear out the people who don't want to be here. And it's not
That's
saying you
so
have to buy
funny.
from me, so please never feel pressured. But invariably, somebody will get affronted that I'm selling something and see themselves out, and then I don't have to pay the next level of thing. Because
Perfect.
I have a
Perfect.
client who has 80,000 on her list or something, a huge email list. And I was like, out of interest, how much do you have to pay for that per month? 880 US dollars just to be
Wow.
able to email people. So, everything's real estate. Like, and then you see people with lifetime access courses. I don't do that because then I still have to pay long after the course is closed, depending on your platform and everything. So, like, you are running a business, yes, in service to everybody, but it's got to serve you first. Otherwise, it's not a win for anyone.
Yeah. One more thing about that. I know we've gotten a little bit off topic here, but it really still is all about connection, about how we connect. I started this practice a number of years ago when I get the notice from my content management system of who's added and who's, left. I will say thank you to the
Bless and
people who came
release.
on, and I will bless the ones who've left and thank them for being with me. And that shifts everything, because I did take it personally in the early days because it was, when you first start a business, it's very personal.
Yes. And also, and I
Yeah.
love it because I'm on your list. And I love that when you have an event, Ginny will send an email with a week to go and then with 1 hour to go. We're starting in an hour. I love that. I know for some people that will drive them crazy. Oh, that's too many emails. Whenever you're doing anything in your business, if you love it, you want to attract the people who are like you, then just do that. And for the people who it's too many emails or it's not enough emails or whatever, bless and release them because you can't please everyone. There'll be some people who, no matter how many emails you send, will say, oh, I didn't know this was on. I missed it. And there's some people will be like, for the love of everything holy, please stop messaging me about this. And you can't cater to all of that. Maybe if you had a massive team and they were handling it, and like I see some people go, click here if you want to hear less, or click here if you want a monthly. I do not have the wherewithal for that. Like, you get the emails from me that you get, and if you don't like it, go with love.
Yeah.
But do what feels good and aligned and lights you up, and trust that the people who are meant for you will appreciate that. Like, it's funny, Ginny and I are having a conversation because I know that you have these events and I'm always meaning to go. And I'm like, I get the 1 hour to go one. And you said to me, you do know there's one that's like a week to go. And honestly, like, you get email blindness because I don't know about anyone else, but I swear I get like 50 emails a day, 40 of which are
Mhm.
usually junk. And I just, and you just kind of, you skim, but you don't really see. So now I actually look out for that week to go one, and then I can put it in my Google Calendar because 1 hour to go for me is usually a great reminder. Oh, here's the link, but it's not I'm going to turn up for this because I've already planned my day.
Sure. Yeah. That's
So,
the
Ginny,
purpose. That's the only purpose of that. Yeah.
yeah. With all of this being said, because yeah, we could talk for hours, and if you want to come back, I'm sure there's other topics we could talk about. But for people who are listening who are like, I love the sound of this gathering, I am craving connection. I know that you run this global on purpose network. No, not network. I'll drop that word. Online now. How can they be a part of it?
They can go to my website, which is opwgc.com, and that stands for On Purpose Woman Global Community. Click on the calendar. You can see when our meetings are. They're the same day every month, not the same date, but the same day. So you can get those on your calendar ahead of time. And if you sign up for my email list, you will then get, like Suzanne said, you'll get the notice a week ahead. You'll get the notice an hour ahead these are for the Zoom meetings. And also I'll send you On Purpose Woman Magazine, which is an online magazine that I created. And if I'm doing anything special, like a workshop or something like that, then you'll also get that. But yeah, I'll come to one of our gatherings. They're intimate gatherings. They're not real big ones. And we do tend to attract mostly women entrepreneurs, but all women are welcome and they're free. All the meetings are free. There are membership opportunities for the community, but you do not have to join to take advantage of the meetings themselves, because
I
we just
love
like to
that.
have people show up. Yeah.
And I really want to encourage people to check out the website. I'll put the link in the show notes. Sign up I really encourage you to sign up so that you get the notification. Otherwise, the stuff is listed on the website so you can find out about it. And it is not a pushy join up for our thing. Because that's another thing too, as we're wrapping up, when we talk about craving connection, I think a lot of people have been burned. I know I certainly have been, because you hear something like this and you are craving connection and you think, oh, this is going to be wonderful. And then you go along and it isn't connection at all. It's basically a pitch fest.
Mm.
And it's not, Ginny's community isn't like that. You can, as I said, there are membership opportunities and it's clearly stated how much it is and what's included. And I think, connection comes from, as I say, I hate the word because it's so overused, but authentic, like authenticity, but also, being clear up front what's included and what's not included. And we've all, well, maybe I'm making an assumption here, but had that friend from high school who suddenly reached out to you, who wants to have lunch, and next thing you're being pitched an MLM, so
Mm.
we're a little bit more discerning or cynical, dare I say, of, where is this actual connection and where is this someone trying to get something from me? And trust your gut, follow along, and if you get if you're like, oh, this isn't for me, then you can leave, especially if you're doing stuff online. It's like, gotta go. And don't make
Yeah.
up some excuse. Literally, gotta go. People don't often ask why. But you're not stuck like you are in a room or an event or at a weekend or workshop or something. So
Right.
go to the thing and trust that. And also too, Ginny didn't mention, but she has a YouTube channel, which I'm pretty sure is linked on your website. You can have a look at some of the previous ones on replay, the things that she has up. For me, as a highly sensitive introvert, I like to experience things like that so that I can know what to expect. And I love that
Mhm.
you have that, option for people, so you kind of get a feel of what it's like ahead of time. So that might be something people, I know my listeners tend to be like me. Not all of you. Some of you are raging extroverts. I remember once I said, this is my closing comment. I made a sarcastic comment about how introverts are always told that we need to speak up more, but nobody ever tells extroverts to shut up.
It's true.
And I had more than one email from an extroverted listener saying, Suzanne, I'm told to shut up all the time. So I will retract my statement and I will apologize. My experience is not everyone's experience, but that is something for us all to remember, that our experience is not everyone's experience. And in the words of Ted Lasso, who's quoting someone else, to be curious and not judgmental. So anything you want to say before we finish up, Ginny?
You said so many great things in that last 5 minutes, but I just think about what it means to consciously network. I think the networking word is fine because it's how we've used it, though, that doesn't always work. But conscious networking, I think, means one, you know why you're showing up. And if you have a hidden agenda, people will smell it. So I always do
Energetic
like a
BO.
thing. Yeah, yeah. I do a thing before I show up for my meetings and other people's. I just get quiet and I set an intention. And typically my heart's open. I'm open to receive. I'm open to give. I'm open for new connections. And if people are interested, great. If they're not, great. If there's that one thing, like you and I met at the speed networking, which means we got to meet one-on-one, if there's one or two of those, I mean, that's amazing. Back in the day when I was getting at my in-person meetings, I would sometimes get 100 people, at one meeting. And that doesn't happen anymore, but it did happen. That was a big booming thing there for a while. But I used to tell people, if you make one connection in a room this big and you feel like you definitely, you honestly have something to follow up conversation or coffee. I'm very discerning about who I say yes to, especially if it's coffee outside and I have to get in my car and go somewhere. It's like,
Hey,
okay, I
you
gotta
got to put on
really think I'm
pants.
gonna like this person, right? Exactly. But set an intention for how you're going to be. And
Yes.
I think if we do that, we will attract like-minded people. But if you show up being someone else, and I learned this the hard way back in the day, I realized if I was putting on this mask or I was trying to be perfect, I would attract the people who wanted that version of me, and it's not sustainable.
There's a
It is not
quote,
sustainable. Yeah.
I used to like it, your vibe attracts your tribe, but apparently culturally people don't necessarily like the term tribe, so I will appreciate that for the people who don't. I need another way to say it. But yeah, as you're saying, if you are turning up fake, then chances are you're going to attract people who are also turning up fake. And
Mhm.
then it's kind of like when you start dating someone and you're like, I'm going to watch all the things they watch and like all the things they like and all this sort of stuff. And then a couple months in, you can't stand each other because both of you were putting on a mask and the real you comes out. And it's like, so if you are like, I'm
You've
just going to be
changed.
me, yeah, you've changed. And it's funny. It's like, no, I've just become the real me. So if you go to these things, like I introduce myself with, they often go around the room. I help people, say no without feeling like a bitch. Some people are like, oh, she swore. We're not going to have a great conversation later. So the being you unapologetically, unfiltered, just as you are, rather than being polished and professional, if that's not the way you are. Some people are. They just like my mother-in-law gets up every day and does her hair and makeup and pearls, and she's like, no matter what, like you could turn up unexpected. You do you, love. Me, I'm like this every day. But, be you and trust that you're going to connect with people who are like-minded or are going to fit for that. And they're the people that you want to connect with rather than putting on a version of you and connecting with people who are putting on a version of them. And then down the road, it's just a whole shit show.
It is. It is. And again, they're gonna expect that person. And like I said, you can't sustain fake you.
No,
The,
that's
the real you will show up
exhausting.
probably cursing or throwing a fit or something. There will be a definite breakup.
Yeah, 100%. So just before we wrap up, one final time, what's your website again for people, please, Ginny?
opwgc.com.
I love the simplicity of that. It is so good. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.
Thanks.